So we've done our work, we're finished, and now we need to do something with them. We'll cover how to send them to different Adobe applications, as well as sending them out to print and web and social media. So let's get started. So first up, open up our file. It's called 20 exporting.psd. Now, this is something we've worked on earlier, so you can have your version open if you like. So the first use case is, let's say I've designed this and I want to put it into something like InDesign, Adobe InDesign, and that's a desktop publishing app. So where I make my magazines and books and flyers and brochures. Now this technique is true for all of the Adobe software. It could be After Effects, it could be Premiere, it could be Illustrator. All they really want is there's actually nothing to do when you export it. You just leave it as this PSD, this working file with all these layers. Exactly the same file you use in Photoshop. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm working on this document here in InDesign. I want to bring in my file, they use place in InDesign. I find in my source files, there's number 20, click open. I drag out my file. I want to kind of cover this thing. Great, move it down. Cool, so that's my kind of banner that I've created. And you can see it just comes through, looks great. It'll print fine from InDesign. Okay, so if you need to incorporate a Photoshop document in any other Adobe product, just bring in the PSD. One of the perks for it though is if I go back into Photoshop, and in here, and I need to make some amends. So let's say this flower here, I just kind of move it around. I decide that it needs to be a bit higher, a bit there. The background, okay, I need to change. I'm gonna go to adjustments. There's an invert adjustment, okay, and it's just flip the colors around. All I need to do is file, save, jump back into InDesign. And in here, nothing really happens except here in my links panel, there's a little icon saying modified. Okay, I'm gonna click to update it. You can see I just went and updated. Okay, so it's a really quick and easy way to work within other Adobe products. It's just to use the PSD, and the cool thing is that when you edit the Photoshop document, it flows into other products. Now let's look at another use case where we wanna go to print. So let's jump back into Photoshop. So here in Photoshop, I need to send this to a printer, okay? Either my home printer or email it to somebody to get commercially printed. It might be a flyer or a business card. And in this case, because there's text and maybe a logo, we're gonna use the PDF format. Okay, so we'll do that one first, and then we'll look at maybe just using a kind of straight up image. So this one here, if I wanna send this to the printer, file, we use the save as instead of export. Okay, click on save as. There's an option in here. If you click on the word PSD, okay, or Photoshop, find the one that says Photoshop PDF. Okay, I'm gonna put mine on my desktop, okay, desktop even, and give it a name. I'm gonna click save, click OK. There's a lot of warning dialogues when we're using this particular save method, because what we wanna do is we wanna turn this off. With that on, it's basically just a Photoshop file, and the file size is huge. Okay, we don't need that. We're sending it to the printer. We don't need them to have all the Photoshop kind of adjustment layers. We just want it to retain all the image, the transparencies, and any vector that we're working with, like the type. So we've turned that off, and up the top here, just make sure you're on high quality print. Watch, if I go back to high quality print, it turns this back on. So I turn it off, and it's high quality print modified. If you see modified, don't sweat it. All it means is that you turn that off. You click save, and it freaks out and says, hey, normally, I think I've turned my warning off. It says, hey, you sure you want to turn those things off? And you say, yes, I do. Cool. I'm going to close that down now, and let's have a look. No, let's not close it down now. Let's have a look at my desktop. There he is there. There's my PDF. Okay, the cool thing about him is he's a real small file size compared to the original. The original that we opened was about 20 megabytes, and it still retains all the niceness, the good quality. Any type has really crisp edges, so that's a great way of sending stuff to the printer. Let's explore a different exporting use case. This kind of more simple. Remember we did the retouching earlier, and let's say now I need to send it to somebody to get printed. Okay, it's going to a photo lab to get printed on nice stock. They don't need a PDF. The PDF will work fine. What they'll probably be looking for is a JPEG. And let's look at using a print JPEG. You do it under File, Save As again. And there's lots of options in here for JPEG. What you want is just the standard JPEG, none of these other ones. Click on that. I'm gonna stick it on my desktop. I'm gonna call this, that's not my desktop. I'm gonna call this model. Okay, click Save. And this is where I guess It's quite important. If you're sending this, we've done some retouching. It's a great photograph. We want to keep it as large as we can. Okay, we don't want to kind of drop any quality. Okay, you wouldn't, especially if you want, this is a commercial print. We want to make it look nice, keep the largest file size. Let's click OK. Let's check my desktop now. And now I've got my JPEG. Okay, how big is he? Let's check him. He's 2.7 megabytes. So still really small, but it will print really nicely. The difference between that and say the PSD we had before is there's no layers left in this one. You can see in my Photoshop document, okay, there's actually 2 layers. This JPEG is a flat pancake, but perfect for sending to the printer because they don't need to see your separate layers. They just want a kind of a nice, compact, small, good quality file to print. All right, the next use case is going out to either a website or social media, and the kind of same rules apply to both of them. It's about getting great quality image for the smallest file size because they need to upload, like especially for a website, we don't want to be waiting for your image to load. We want it to go super fast. So let's look at this first option here. And let's say I want to save this out for a banner for Facebook, title, or say it's an Instagram post. What I want to do is go to File, and in a slightly different place, it's under Export. And this one here, Export As is the magic one. Click on Export As. If you're using Save for Web, it works okay. Export As is better, in my opinion. Okay, so in this one here, because there's no transparency, by transparency, remember there's no like checkerboard in the background, there's no kind of like hole in the background. In this case, a JPEG is going to be the best. Okay, and the quality slider, when we exported the print version of a JPEG, we had to use a different way because it retains more detail that's used for printing. Because it's going to a website or to our social media account, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, we don't need that same level. So we use the Export As feature. And whereas before we had the quality jammed up as high as we can because we weren't worried about file size, in this case, it's basically as low as you can go. Can you go down to 2% quality? The way to know is if you zoom in, can you start to see it's starting to look pretty junky at 2%. The cool thing about it though is over here you can see it's actually 37 kilobytes. Okay, so it's teeny tiny. So best to check it at 100%. Okay, you can see even 100% you can see some of the interpolation or some of the pixels all glooping together. So how low should you go? Like my rough rule of thumb is between, so low is 30 and high is 60. Okay, I find somewhere in there is my middle ground normally. There are exceptions. So let's try 30. Click out somewhere. Are you happy with 30? Zoom in a little bit. And this is totally up to you. You're like, what is it for? Type is going to kind of stand it out quite a bit. You're not going to notice too much in here. You can see it still looks pretty good, even when I'm zoomed in. Okay, but things that have like crisp edges will stand out a little bit more. So I might decide, actually, I'm going to go up to 60. You can just drag this up and down by clicking here and just going up and down and deciding what you want. You can see the file size though is a lot bigger at 135 than it is at 30. So the trade-off, if you don't care about file size, go for the higher version. So for websites, file size is really important. For social media, not so much. Just leave it at 100%. It's fine if you're going to just post it to your Twitter account. All right, once you've got it there, I'm going to click Export All, give it a name on my desktop, leave it as is, .jpg, hit save, and we're done. Now there are occasions where you've spent ages getting a mask. Okay, I've turned off the background, the eyeball here. And remember we did these masks earlier? Okay, and we spent a lot of time doing it because we need transparency. Often you'll only need transparency if it's going out to a website. Not everyone's going to need this, okay, but let's say we need to retain the see-throughness of our image because on the website you can actually see through to the background, which is perfect. So all we need to do is we go to the same feature, File, Export, Save As. We just save it as a PNG. A JPEG you will see will fill in the checkerboard transparency with white because a JPEG just can't handle transparency. But a PNG magically can. Okay, so it'll leave that, even though it's got a checkerboard, it'll just be see-through. This might be cool if you're going out to say a video product and you want to keep the transparency, or in my case, I do a lot of web stuff, so it just needs the transparency. Big trade-off is there's no quality slider, and over here you can see the file size is really big. If it wasn't so big, okay, and didn't have so much stuff going on in it, it would be a lot smaller, but yeah, that's how you get out a file for web that has transparency. Let's click Save All, Save, and that's it. So hopefully that gives you, quickly go over it once more time, okay, so normally just leave it as a PSD if you want to put it into another program, like InDesign or Illustrator or After Effects. But if you need to go to print, Okay, typically you just be doing a JPEG, but you have to go to this file save as JPEG. It's different from the JPEG in here. It has more quality for printing. If, like in this example, there's text involved or logos and vector and all sorts of stuff going on, it's probably better to save it as a PDF, and that's under the save. They like to mix them around, exporting sometimes, save as sometimes. So save as is the PDF. And the last was social media or websites, and it's just hiding under file, export, export as, and a JPEG if you don't have transparency, a PDF if you do. All right, friends, that is going to be the end of the exporting video. I will see you in the next one. All right.